That was really fantastic. So, yeah, thank you. We haven't got that much time, unfortunately. So, I mean, it's 21 years since that film was released and also shown on television. And I mean, for me, it's something that really still resonates so powerfully in terms of its political issues and really events of recent times, but also in terms of its artistic strategies and artist filmmaking in the last 10 years or so. But I wondered if you could kind of take us a bit back in time and just to reflect on perhaps what you were thinking about in the development of the project. And, you know, at the beginning you talked about this kind of Fanon mania. So perhaps if you could just kind of maybe set the scene in some way for the conception and development of the project.
Well, I think at the time we were very interested in questions which were connected to Fanon's ideas, and we were involved, I think, quite a lot of artists and theorists in looking at Fanon's ideas. And there was an exhibition which took place, which was organised by Innova, which Julien headed, who's also in the film. We had our offices when we were making the film in Innova, and I think there's a lot of interest in his ideas, both theoretically. I was a student in 1984, and my thesis was called The Other Look, and so I was very interested in these sort of ideas of visual culture, how they related to art and the post-colonial. And I think with Fanon, I was very interested in psychoanalysis and politics, and when we were making the film, I think one of the things which developed from the conferences and exhibitions which took place at the ICA in 1995 was really the question of the way in which these questions of racism and the question of desire, and to find the kind of logic which was beyond the pure rationality, if you like. And so there's a way in which, with Fanon, it gave a kind of insight into this psychic workings of these questions. I think in making the film, it was very much the wretched of the earth, and in the process of making the wretched, in visualizing parts of the wretched of the earth, these other questions of violence became kind of forefronted, you know. So I think those were, so in the process of making the work, it was really then the question of violence and sort of armed struggle and what that means and how that resonates in Arab cultures, and how, so I think all of those things were very pertinent, and I think we still have the unfinished business, the ghosting of those debates today.
I mean, it's a very... Sorry, Mark, were you going to...
No, it's fine.
Okay. I mean, it's a very kind of concise and compact piece of work, and it, in a way that's kind of with a sense of collage and montage. And I wanted to ask you, Colin, I mean, it's a very subtle performance in some of the scenes that you're giving, but at the same time, kind of what you're doing is often sparking off things that aren't actually happening with you at that precise moment. So I was kind of wondering what was the process of, interpreting the script, or kind of what was sort of happening in those moments when you're acting, and how was it to respond to it?
Well, it was total commitment to Isaac's art. I think as an actor, we always are open to our directors, the script and the Bible, we call it. And it's really important. I mean, when you're talking about Bible, I think Black Skin, White Masks, Wretched of the Earth, these are real tomes of critical thinking, which is the thing that really stuck with me. And I was thrilled to hear those lines at the end. And I think as much as it's about critical thinking, it is critical to think. And I think Fanon, his point of death is 1961, which is the beginning of all the independence of Jamaica, which for me is my stepfather's country, Ghana, which is my bloodfather's country. So his thoughts were leading to this point in time. Isaac had that totally in his vision, and I just did it without question. And that's really not an easy thing to do. But you have to drop the ego, and you just have to take direction. I think it's a beautiful piece. When I was doing it, and I saw the projections behind me when I was sitting, to be so still is because you're all part of a tableau. So Yeah.
And especially since, is this working? Yeah. Especially since the script was in fact a collage of Fanon's writing, so every word in that script was from one of the English translations of Fanon's work. So you had, in a way, to construct a Fanon from the collage elements that we assembled together. But looking at it now, it strikes me that it, like you're saying, well, it's very much of its time in a way. It's incredibly ambitious visually, the mixture of different materials, Super 8, archive footage, the reenactment, and the kind of, which people may not realize, that a lot of the scenes are shot in the studio with images which we shot, which Isaac directed, in Tunisia, and then they were reprojected, back projected in a studio. So it has a kind of layering and a complexity, which is quite difficult to do nowadays. And I think at the time we thought, when we were talking to the BBC, that, oh, this is fantastic, we're doing a film on Fanon and we're going to be able to do other films like this. And they said, well, actually, we're not doing series and these single things anymore, we're just doing series. Yours is like the last. And in fact, they were slightly prophetic, because after this, then Isaac moved into doing projects for the art world, although this is, as Isaac was saying at the beginning, very much an art film. It wasn't possible to work in this way, continue to work in this way.
I mean, this is a... Right, how are we doing? Maybe we should open up. I do have a question, but I'm keen that other people have a chance to ask questions. So, does anyone have a question for anyone? Okay, I'm going to come over with the microphone for you so everyone can hear.
Thank you very much for that. It was wonderful. What do you think the relevance is for now, in a time where we see a resurgence of a lot of colonial and racist attitudes in different parts of the world? How do you think it's still relevant? And secondly, where do we find a copy of the script?
Well, the second one is easy to answer, because well, we don't actually have the script itself, but we have the DVD, which you can, I think, even buy outside, or certainly buy in the bookshop tomorrow. And Fanon's writings are available, and so the script was developed from the writings. I don't know about the first part of the question. In some ways, I think the questions have never gone away, and when we see it now, we think, well, we could have made it yesterday almost, and if we'd made it yesterday, it would have been almost the same. Maybe slightly different, but that's what strikes us. But I don't know what you think, Isaac.
Well, I think simply we've been involved at our studio in the process of doing a lot of conservation work. So there's the conservation work on the Frantz Fanon film, which was at its more or less its 20th anniversary. We've also been involved in Looking for Langston, a film which I made in 1989, and conserving that work. And there are a number of films, and that's partly to do with the fact that there are a lot of people who want to see some of these early works. So a work which I made in 1983, Who Could Colin Roach, for example, is a work that we have a lot of demands for people who want to see this work. And I think works like Territories, The Passion of Remembrance, these are all films that there's been quite a lot of demand in terms of interest, in terms of phone calls, lots of younger people wanting to see these works. So I think there is a kind of demand to see these works. So there's quite a lot of work to do with the British Film Institute in terms of trying to conserve these works and making these works exist for a kind of broader audience, because I think there is a kind of interest in the works and the questions which are being posed, which remain, in a way, I think, a point of interest. And so I think, as Mark said, I mean, of course, if we made a film on Fanon today, it might be quite different. But it might be quite impossible to make it in the way that we did, only because of, really, I think some of the ideas around bricolage and how that can be used as a way of trying to talk about politics and to explore it is a sort of form which, in a way, one still has a commitment to, but it's a commitment in other areas. You know, if we think about film culture generally, you know, it's a sad thing to say, but that has disappeared, in terms of kind of radicality, in terms of commitment to aesthetics and politics, even in the culture of the British Film Institute as a kind of funder of films. This has all vanished. And so really it's about how we could make certain debates and arguments and demands for the possibility for a kind of cinema that could exist that's not simply to do with appeasing very narrow definitions around Britishness. And so I think that is a continued debate in relation to art and culture today, in the moving image and in film generally.
Well, in terms of your kind of recent works, how and with Frantz Fanon, I mean, what's the status of this film for you now, in terms of not in terms of its ideas and the way it's made, but in terms of the way that it was exhibited in cinema and on television, and now in the kind of modes and the discourses that you're working now in terms of the galleries film. What does this kind of film mean for you in that way? You see what I mean?
Well,
I was just.
I think it's
Okay.
many platforms, as many platforms as possible. Blu-ray, DVD, gallery, television, film, internet.
But I was going
You
to
really
just.
don't care.
I was going to say that the reason we've been able to restore it is because of Isaac's subsequent career, and then people being interested in screening the earlier work, and so one of the venues in Brazil paid for some of the rights to be cleared, which then meant we could present the project to the BFI,
30,000 it cost.
pass the project
Which I
to the
paid
BFI. So the two are intimately connected. I think if we'd just stayed as filmmakers, we'd have had to raise, or the BFI and us together would have had to raise 60 or 70 grand to make it available
As
in
a
the way
Blu-ray
it is,
DVD.
as a Blu-ray
for
DVD, which is why
£14.
so many films disappear in that way, because of the difficulty of moving between analog and digital.
And very important there, of course, we have Stuart Hall and we have Fanon's brother, and if we hadn't done it at that time, we wouldn't have had the brilliance of the minds who were really giving it context. I mean, I know what I did in research, but really, Stuart Hall, well, it's extraordinary. So again, my hat goes off to the guys for doing it at the time, because that's what it matters. That's what
I mean, you get the visionary thinking of Frantz Fanon, but in many ways I see it's almost like a series of conversations between all these different thinkers and yourself, and it kind of coming through, and so you get the sense of, these are Fanon's ideas, but also coming out in such great speakers as Stuart Hall. I mean, it's a really very rich tapestry of ideas and individuals. And
I love the quietness of it. I love the fact he doesn't shout. He says that at the beginning. It's a very tempered piece, and yet what we're talking about is revolution. And quietly, it's like my dad, come here, Coral. You know you're in trouble. Yes.
Time for one last question, if I can see through the. Okay, well, that's hand shot up rather high there, so that's good.
Apropos of the quietness of Stuart Hall and of Frantz Fanon and of the film itself, did you at any point ever think of having somebody who thought his ideas were absolutely appalling? Any French person, for example, or...
Well, we do. I mean, not appalling, but there's Maurice Condé who's critiquing his lack of feminism, I would say, and there's Mohamed Harbi who's taking a different position. We very much didn't want to do a hagiographical film which was simply celebrating Fanon, so we had a number of the positions that were quite in circulation at the time. And in fact, a lot of people, especially in the States, were very upset that we made this film, because they wanted the way to use Fanon as a kind of sort of inheritor of Malcolm X and so on. He was to be a revolutionary leader. And when the film was shown in the States, then people were a bit upset because we explored these areas like his attitude on homosexuality and so on. So, but at the same time, we think his ideas are very important, so we wouldn't have done too much negative criticism.
Unfortunately, we are going to have to bring it to a close, but it's been a great session, and so pleased that you could all be with us, and all the other people who worked on the film who are also out in the audience. So, just everyone, please give Isaac, Mark, and Colin a